It's about time to get started. Jason, if you're doing our clicking. All right, we are good to go. Appreciate Jason filling in tonight for Rich, who's usually here to help if I'm not the one to do the starting of the video. So hopefully that will be going and people can see it from afar. We've got a lot of people out tonight. That was something I saw, notifications coming up, and more people were popping out and having other things going on. So, but we've got what we've got here tonight, and then we're going to have a lesson tonight that I hope will be enriching. I hope it'll be helpful. It's one of our series on raising God's children, and this is obviously the second in the series. We did the intro a week and a half ago or so that Sunday, and from now on we should be on Wednesdays from this point all the way through the end of the quarter, which actually ends in July, first week of July, Wednesday. And so as we start this, what I wanted to do was, first off, I want to pick someone to lead us in a prayer, because I'm going to do our disclaimer here, and then we're going to do our prayer. So, Danny, if you don't mind, just in a second, we'll do that. I want to do a disclaimer before we do this lesson, and you'll see why by the time we get to the end of the lesson. But I wanted to say there were a lot of people that I had talked to in preparation for this lesson, and they asked, will it be recorded, and can we get access to it? And I said yes. But one of the things I realized as we did that was I wanted to state that this lesson, and this audience is just perfect for this, is this lesson is not intended for children. It is a lesson for parents, and it's a lesson for those who are more mature. It is going to be PG. There's nothing in it that's patently offensive. It's not that. But the topic and the material we're talking about can be construed in a way that it would be looked at as giving ideas to children that might otherwise not have ideas about some of these things. And so as I'm doing this, not necessarily for y'all, because y'all are all perfectly mature to handle that, but it's for those who might watch the video later. This is not a video to sit down and watch with your kids, because they're going to say, well, what's that he's talking about? And they're going to look that way, and you're going to say, I wish you hadn't mentioned that. So I wanted to say that first, that it's not intended for children for that reason. So with that being said, Danny, would you lead us in our prayer, and then we'll get started from there.
Our God and our Father in heaven, thank you for this time we have that we can come together with one another, that we can open your word and consider your will. Father, we ask that you will be with ours as he's prepared these things, that you will be with each of our hearts, that we will dedicate them to you, that we will leave this place better Christians than we can. We ask these things in Christ's name.
Amen. Thank you, Danny. All right. Well, the topic of choosing battlefields came from, it was a long time ago that I heard a telling of a story, and those of you who are history buffs might understand this. But there's a Civil War battle that I want to do a real quick overview with you and look at, and then I'm going to make an application of it to the lesson and kind of have it be our theme for tonight as we go. And that battlefield comes from the concept of the first battle of Bull Run. And that's the first major battle of the Civil War. It took place in 1861, and the concept of the battle is that negotiations had fallen down. The Southern troops were in and around D.C., and the Union troops were going to be sent out to meet them for their first big battle. And so this showdown was going to happen at that point. So what happens is that as the day draws near, that Sunday draws near, people are in their Sunday best, because that's what you did back then. Most people did it. They went to church or other things, and so they were in their Sunday best, and they know this battle is coming. In the North, the people in D.C. are convinced that this is going to be over very shortly. This is going to be a quick battle. This war is going to be over, and everything is going to be just fine, back to normal. So as the day approaches and they go out, it's 5:30 in the morning and these people go out. Well, back then you couldn't stop at Taco Bell if you get out and doing something like this, right? So they took their food and all their stuff with them in their carriages, and all these spectators leave out of D.C. to go see this battle. So they camped away about 5 miles away from the battle. The battle starts, and they can hear the cannon fire in the distance. Some of them said they could see the smoke above the trees. And so word comes back after a couple hours. They've got the rebels on the run, and the Confederate soldiers are scattering, and they're like, hey, that's exciting. It's what we thought. And they've got their picnics all laid out. So they pick up all their picnics in their carriages, and they roll closer to the battle, about 5 miles closer. And so what they end up doing is they end up camping near a field hospital right at the back of the battle line. And they get there, well, by the time of the travel and the time that they got there, things had changed. And so while they're getting all their stuff out and laying out their picnic blankets, thinking they're going to actually see the battle at this point, what happens is the Confederates had rearranged, and they came back and were pushing the Union soldiers back. And the battle switched severely to the point where the Union soldiers were now pushed back into the spectators, and they're retreating through the middle of the spectators. So people are out in their picnic blankets, and there's Union soldiers, and there's bullets flying, and cannon fire is going. One U.S. senator was actually there as part of the spectators, and his carriage was destroyed by cannon fire. And so they're there in the middle of a war scene with picnic blankets and their Sunday best. It was chaos, obviously. The people gather up, they jump in their carriages, and they're trying to get out of there. And in their haste, as they leave, they're running over the Union soldiers that are wounded, and some of them were just trying to run. And they killed several of them. It was a really horrific scene of these people that weren't where they're supposed to be. And they didn't know how to act once they were there, and they're trying to get out from the battlefield. That's the end of the story. There's a lot more to it that you can read online. You can see pictures of the people they took and sitting in the fields. It's pretty amazing. The point that I wanted to bring up from all of that is that it reminds me spiritually of I'm going to speak for myself, it reminds me spiritually of the change in our battle and our landscape that has changed from when I was a child and the threats that were out there to where now what our children are facing. To some extent, I feel like spiritually that a lot of Christians, myself included, over 15 years or so, were sitting on picnic blankets while a battle raged around that we didn't really know was going to be there. And I think that's kind of the lesson that I wanted to pull from that. And that is the concept that obviously we know that technology has exploded over the last 25 years. It's changed greatly the landscape of our lives. And a lot of that's for the better. You know, we're a lot more comfortable. We get a lot more done. You might argue that it might be great if we got a little less done sometimes, or less was asked of us because of technology. But the point is that technology in general has made a pretty good impact into our lives, and it's been something that's been pretty useful. And so that was supposed to be up there that whole time. But the point is that while it does do that, and while it has added a lot of things to our lives, one of the things that has also been upgraded is Satan's ability through technology to affect our lives. And that's just a simple truth of the matter, and that's where we are at this point. And that took me up to about 15 years ago to start seeing this. And it's not because I looked around and I was so wise, because I could see all the impacts and predict where the technology was going to go with social media and online imagery and stuff like that. Honestly, where I saw it first was as I started seeing it in the carnage of Christian families. That's where I started to see it the most. And that's where Christian families, which had been just basically dismantled and crushed by the influx of technology and the things that their kids could find on the internet, and some survived, some of those children did, and some of them didn't. Some of them are lost today, and horribly lost, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. And all along, we kind of picnicked while the battle raged. And I don't think a lot of us, I can say myself, I wasn't really super aware of what the battle was and how great it had spread in that. And so to prepare for this lesson, as I told you, I talked to a lot of the people that were involved in these battles over the last 15 years or so, that where we are now. And I've talked to a lot of them, and you know, basically only the survivors, obviously. The others won't talk to me. But the reason that I chose this imagery is because when our children, as they grow and as they have changed, and as they grow and they grow older and they have a larger world to look at, technology has sped up the types of battlefields they're going to find themselves on quicker and worse than they were when I grew up. And that's just the truth of it. I look at what our children face as a landscape right now as they grow, and it makes me shudder. I kind of think it is scary to think of what they're going to face. And to some extent, the truth is, we can't keep them off all the battlefields. There is a simple truth to that. They live in the world, as Christ said. You can't go out of the world. I don't want you to do that. You have to be in the world. But the point that I want to make from tonight's lesson is while we can't keep them off all the battlefields, we can't keep them from being afflicted by all the things, but we can, number one, we can make a plan so that when they do, that we've discussed it. And then they understand what it is and what it is that they're dealing with and who to talk to and what to do about that. But number two, we can affect, and then we're going to talk about the reason for this, but we can affect the length of time that they're on that battlefield and what they're doing. And the reason I know I haven't filled in a lot of these details, but the reason I bring this up is because right now, what I see in my experience, and I'll share some of that with you, my experience is what I see is that children are skipping along playing on the battlefield while the parents are picnicking, and I'm looking around going, I'm not so sure that's a good idea because they're in a battlefield, but no one seems to know it, and the children are dropping. And I've been witness to this, and like I said, I'm going to share some of those details with you. And so that's kind of the approach that I wanted to take tonight, was to share some of these things with you so that we can help our awareness of what's going on, and also to make a plan for our children as we look to raise God's children. Can I get someone to read all three of these verses? We'll just read them back to back. Ken, if you don't mind, I'll get you next, Johnny.
Horse is made ready for the day of battle. But victory is from the Lord. Praise be to the Lord my rock, who trains my hand for war, my hands for battle. 2 Corinthians 10:34. For though we walk in the flesh, we are not waging war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds.
Okay, we know these verses. They're very familiar to us. In the context of what we're talking about, obviously we know when I use this imagery of a battlefield, that's not foreign to us. God talks about the warfare that we're in. The horse is made ready for the day of battle. Victory rests with the Lord. I want us to understand that although all this stuff that I'm going to present tonight, honestly, as I've prepared it, I've got 10 pages of notes here. It's not going to take long. A lot of it's going to be consumption. But there were 11 pages that didn't make the cut tonight. That's how much material in a week and a half that I gathered on this to kind of put this together. There's a lot out there. And yes, it's going to terrify us just a little bit. If it doesn't, then I'm sorry, I didn't do my job. It should terrify us a little bit. It should put a little terror into our hearts. But know that the battle belongs to the Lord. Victory rests with the Lord. He has a plan for us to raise our children in this battlefield because he knew it was going to be here, and he gave us the tools to deal with it. But we've got to use the tools. We have to be not unaware that the battle is there. 2 Corinthians 10, verses 3 and 4. There is a sense in which we can get caught up so much in the physical internet battle of what's going on physically that we forget that realistically what we're really battling is a spiritual battle. And I want us to be encouraged by that all the stuff that's out there, the spiritual battle has stayed the same since God created us. And he's prepared to win that battle for us. And so as we look at it, we know that the weapons of warfare are not of flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds. We have power on this earth, and we can affect that. But there's nothing in these verses that says, I will sit back and ignore the battle and God will win it for me. These battles don't say that, and we've got to be aware of that. All right, we're about to start our first topic. The way I kind of went back and forth trying to figure out how to present this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do this in kind of presentation style because I don't think we'd ever get through it otherwise. I'm going to present for about 10 or 12 minutes on this material, and then I'm going to open it up for discussion and have everybody just comment and do everything like that. So I'll kind of get through the material first. Otherwise, I think we'll bog down, and it'll be too easy to do that in that format. All right, if that works, and I appreciate your patience with that. I don't like lecturing in general, so this is not something that works for me normally speaking, but doing that. Okay, so first I wanted to talk about social media. There's two areas that we're going to talk about tonight. This one's familiar to y'all. Real quickly, this is the time for input. Real quickly, just shout out, don't raise your hand, don't pause. Just shout out, how many social media sites do you guys just know? Tell me a few, we'll count them up. You don't know any, this is great. So this is going to be Facebook. Yes, we all know Facebook. Instagram, that's the new Facebook for the young people. Snapchat. If someone says MySpace, I'm going to just lose it. It's not even real. Snapchat, that's right, okay. X, that's right, or it used to be Twitter. TikTok, the big one, right? Reddit, 6, okay. Nextdoor, yeah, I saw that one recently. You can find out if everybody's lost their dogs all over Cokeville. So yeah, 6, 7, okay, 7. Kind of slowing down now. 8. Do what? Messenger, okay. Had no idea. Okay, 8, I believe you. YouTube, 9. So somewhere around there. And I think that's pretty normal. Actually, you guys got more than I would have been able to come up with for sure. Here's the deal with it, though. These people put together a graphic. This is a graphic organizing basically the top 100 social media sites that are out on the internet right now. You can't read it, I know, it's hard to look at, but these are the substantial ones. These are the ones with backing that actually have presence on the internet, and they're organized into categories. Over 100 social media sites. And this does not include the ones that are categorized as called deviant. There's a whole new flood of social media sites that are called deviant social media sites. Use your imagination. You kind of know where they go. This is what's out there for the offering for our children regarding social media. And I think it's safe to say that most of us could be honest and look at this chart and say, I don't really have the ability to get my mind around the entire picture of what's available to my children on the internet. I mean, seriously, who can know this? I mean, this is crazy. The amount of information, the different approaches, and all the different these are all social media. This isn't every website. This is social media only. Only those that you can interact on and get feedback from in doing that. So like I said, I think we can safely say that we do not have a total grasp on that. I don't want to spend a lot of time in any of these lessons talking about worldly voices and what they teach us, but I do think it's worthwhile, and maybe you've seen quotes like this before. Former Facebook vice president, this man was in Facebook at the start of it and kind of got through the start, and then he went away from Facebook, and now he travels around telling everyone, get off Facebook. Don't be a part of it. And he regrets it. He's part of what they call I think it's called the regret tour or something like that. They have regret of being a part of this. His name is Chamath Palihapitiya. That's actually the way you say it. I practiced it. So his name is Chamath Palihapitiya, and he says, social media tools are ripping apart the social fabric of how society works through dopamine-driven feedback loops that lead to a lack of civil discourse, cooperation, and the spread of misinformation. It's a pretty deep statement, but I think we all, to some extent, you're all mature and smart people. You've seen some of this happening in society. You know that this is the case. We all do. And we've all battled with our own relationship, like a bad romance with social media all of us have to some extent, unless you'd never gotten on it, which good for you. I appreciate that. But the idea is that I want to speak a little bit about what he mentions here, that dopamine-driven feedback loop. That is the brainchild of the beginning of social media. Social media is not about people getting together and talking. That would be great. I think Nextdoor is more like that. I'm so bored by Nextdoor. I see notices and I read them and I just leave. It's easy to get on there and get right back off. You don't spend a lot of time on it. Nextdoor is not written with a dopamine-driven feedback loop in it. Facebook is. Instagram is. All these other ones are built with an algorithm. They consulted psychologists and scientists, and they put together a system by which the design is to keep you in the platform. Does it work?
If you let it.
Yeah, sometimes if you don't, it works, doesn't it? Have you ever found yourself losing time scrolling Facebook or Instagram or something else where you're just there and you look around and realize it's an hour later or 45 minutes later and you wonder where the time went? I have. What do they call that? There's a word for it. Doom scrolling. I have no idea why they call it that. Maybe you're just like, you're doing it till doom comes. I don't know what the meaning of it is. Maybe you could describe it. But the concept is it's called doom scrolling. There's a scientific process behind this. It's called dopamine feedback or dopamine feedback loops. Dopamine, a lot of people think of dopamine and think, oh, dopamine is like the pleasure hormone or something like that. Dopamine doesn't cause pleasure. Dopamine tells you to seek out things that you think are pleasurable. And it's an important difference. Now, number one, I'm going to tell you clearly, Daniel's not here tonight, but Daniel, we have nurse practitioners, we have doctors in the audience that could describe this better than I am. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but this is what I understand about it. Dopamine is a drug, it's a hormone, it's released by our bodies. In a normal dopamine loop, what we do is we have dopamine, which tells us I like something, and so I'll seek it out if offered. Okay, so let's use ice cream. I like ice cream. If someone offers me a bowl of ice cream, my dopamine response is, I like ice cream. So yes, I'd like a bowl of ice cream. And you eat the bowl of ice cream, which gives you pleasure. That reinforces the dopamine response, and you go, I like ice cream, and you continue to like ice cream. And that's all fine, but when I finish that bowl, what if they offer me a second bowl? Okay, honestly, I could eat it. Okay, so I'd eat a second bowl, but let's say they come up with a third bowl. What do I usually at this point say? That's okay, I'm satiated. The pleasure has begun to stop because there's a natural end to my dopamine loop. My dopamine engine at that point says, he's full, stop releasing the dopamine, don't attach the pleasure now, and tell them, I'm okay, thank you. And you quit, and you walk away from the ice cream, and the loop ends, and your life goes on. It's called homeostasis. Your body reaches an equilibrium with it. Enter Facebook, let's say. This is the easiest one I can refer to over and over. Enter Facebook. What they've designed in Facebook is, let's say in the morning you decide to post your breakfast picture. Don't laugh, you know you've done it. But you'll post your breakfast picture that has what you're eating for breakfast, and then what do you have to have beside it? Your Bible and your coffee, right? You have to take your picture and tell everyone, I'm a good Bible student, I'm going to eat my breakfast, I'm going to do this, and you post it, and it goes on Facebook, okay? Once it goes on Facebook, you say, that's it, I just close my phone and I don't ever look at it again, right? Is that what happens? No, what do you have on Facebook that you're looking to actually interact with? Yeah, likes and comments, your friends. You've got friends. That's why I've built up all these friends, so they can like my picture of my breakfast and give me back some self-validation, some positive feedback, some good feeling. It's pleasure. And I'm not even saying that's wrong, by the way. It's good. Christians are to give each other self-validation and positive comments. This is not negative against that. This is part of the cycle, though. But in the cycle, we get that feedback back, and then we play out the comments and all the likes through the next 2 hours, and then it stops. And unlike the ice cream, though, what Facebook does is they start setting you up and going, I know what you're thinking because of what you've posted and what you've commented. I'm going to start feeding you information that starts your next dopamine drop. And you're going to start looking for pleasure in other things in Facebook. And you're going to start scrolling and looking through and looking for the next fulfillment of your dopamine search for pleasure. And you're going to keep doing that until maybe an hour goes by, or you get to post something else, or you're thinking of something else to share, or you see a cute cat video, or whatever it is. But it's going to keep cycling this dopamine cycle, and it's called a dopamine-driven feedback loop. That's actually the name in the Facebook that they've created in this. It's built into the social media platforms to grow engagement and to keep people there. Okay, so instead of us walking away, then what we do is we start to actually build a sense of addiction. Have you ever known of anyone that you would say is probably getting close to or maybe experienced a little bit of addiction to social media? I did. Let me describe it this way. Have you ever been on social media or been a part of social media to the point where when you do post something or you see something or you've had to take a break to do something and you set your phone down and you walk away from it, you have just a little bit of anxiety about leaving your phone behind? Just a little feeling of, I don't like to be separated, I'll just put it in my pocket while I walk around. I experienced that, just for my phone in general, not social media. I'm not on social media right now, but I experienced that. Have you ever experienced that? Have you ever felt that feeling of not wanting to be separated from it? There's a groove that's been driven in us by that dopamine cycle. That's what phones and social media have given us to some extent. Except that these grooves don't actually have an end. They are just a circle. Now, what happens with most of us when the dopamine cycle has been burned out and we're running and we're doom scrolling? What happens eventually if you're on it for 45 minutes? You're all mature adults. What eventually, can you just stay on Facebook all day? No, what ends up happening? You got to put it down. Life happens, right? The kids scream, someone calls, you got to go back to work, you got to do your thing. You get things that break the cycle, right? Plus we have maturity. After a while, you start to feel a little guilty. You're like, man, I'm just wasting an hour of my life doing nothing but looking at cat videos. We realize that there's something that we don't like about it. We kind of feel bad about it after a bit. That is a dopamine feedback loop that ends in guilt. and it's associated with a lot of dopamine cycles. So we actually have a mechanism that kind of protects us. There are people who do not have that mechanism, or it's not developed, or they fall to it. And in those instances, we see people who are actually addicted as adults. Fast forwarding, children. Children don't have those defenses in social media. They don't have the way to break the dopamine cycle of addiction. And so they're much more susceptible to that cycle. And so what happens when you take a child who's been used to, and you guys have seen videos and other things of this, who's used to using the phone and being on social media, and the parents take it away, how does the child react? They're angry. I've seen videos of the kids throwing fits, destroying things, withdrawal, aggression, depression, all of it from taking away the device and threatening that loop. Well, it's because they're addicted. There's a level of addiction there that's caused this damage and being able to do that. Speaking of worldly voices, I do want to show you a quote. This is from a woman named Varda Epstein. This is not a woman to ever refer to for any parenting advice whatsoever in your life. She is a well-known writer. I don't know if any of you have ever heard her. She's written a lot of books. She's well-written. She's in a lot of publications. She's been published in Washington Post, Huffington Post, Learning Site, e-learning, Internet for Classrooms. The list goes on. She consults with the Department of Education on how to build what our children should be taught in schools. Listen to what she says about how the worldview is about these types of children-driven behavior with phones. And this is the question she's addressing. So should teens and smartphones be separated for their own good? Not so fast, because after all, the invisible cord is strong. The phone is your child's entire world right now. Taking it away may end up doing more harm than good. Social networks, as networked publics, also offer teens spaces where they can connect with their friends without adult oversight. This frees teens to try out various ways of expressing themselves as they develop their identities. Teens might, for instance, use bold language in a text that would shock a parent. They're looking to see what works, what feels right, as they make their way into adulthood. And again, the phone is the portal to this virtual space. So what happens if you take away the phone? Pretty much, listen to what she says, pretty much you're taking away the primary vehicle for a teen's social and emotional development. That is the worldview, folks. Don't you do this to your kids. If you go online and talk about taking away phones from kids and what you should do, the feedback you'll get is this: you'll break them, you'll hurt them, you're going to take away, you're going to emotionally scar them by taking away their phone, because it is the primary vehicle for a teen's social and emotional development. If that's the case, we've done something horribly wrong with our children. And that's just the truth of the matter. There is no way that that should actually be the case. So, social networking should not be the primary engine, obviously, for our children in that. And I know I'm preaching to the choir in this, but and I do feel like to some extent what I'm doing is I'm describing drunkenness to a room full of Christians, saying drunkenness is wrong, and you're all going, yeah, I get it. I understand that. But I do want to be able to say this because this isn't by accident. These behaviors are not by accident, they're by design. And although you guys know the truth about these things, I understand that. What I want us to understand is that it is by design that these people have created these things. There's a reason that the top CEOs, Facebook, Facebook, Microsoft, and others have, Steve Jobs, Apple CEO, Steve Jobs' children never were allowed to have an iPad. That's kind of an interesting fact, right? Facebook, and he also had a technology-free home, and he sent his kids to schools. They weren't technologically free, but they were extremely limited, only when necessary. Bill Gates, same thing. No technology for the kids. We're not allowed to be on internet or social media. And there was another one I had in my mind. But anyway, the idea is that they know. And if you listen to what they say the reason is because I see the damage that is done. They'll say it out in interviews. You can watch Mark Zuckerberg interviews, and he'll say, "Oh, I'd never let my kids on Facebook." We need to understand and listen to the people that are designing these things. They know something in a way that we don't in doing that. This isn't exactly at a high level, I get that, but we are not immature Christians. We know that I look at Facebook and Instagram and all the ones that we listed, and we've already said, and I've already said, and I will say, they're not inherently sinful. There's nothing wrong with a social media site. That's not the point. But as Christians and mature Christians, we know that there are differences between things that are sinful and there are things that are profitable, that are beneficial for us, and that's just the truth. And I do want to look at 1 Corinthians 6:12. Can I, Johnny, if you don't mind to read that for me.
All things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be dominated by either.
Okay, and I think that this is the kind of the rule that I look at as far as social media goes, especially when it comes to children. And we can also apply this rule to ourselves, I mean, myself included. All things are lawful. We have a choice of a lot of different things we can do and we can choose for our children, but not everything is profitable. But the last line is the scary one to me. I will not be dominated by anything. And I think that's where the line of social media gets crossed a lot of times. It's dominating. It takes over, and it affects the way our children act. And by the ladies said, and what we've also seen, it becomes something that becomes a dependency for the children in that. One more quote from a worldly person, I know. Dr. Nancy DeAngelis, Director of Behavioral Health. The overuse of social media can actually rewire a young child or teen's brain to constantly seek out immediate gratification, leading to obsessive, compulsive, or addictive behaviors. This is what can make mental health disorders such as anxiety, depression, ADHD, and body dysmorphia worse. Here's the truth of the matter, guys, and if you look around and read around a little bit, you'll understand this. These algorithms and other things that are at work in our society, we are in the middle, for our children, of a mental health crisis. And a lot of you probably know that. You've read enough to understand that. Did you know what the number 2 cause of death for children that are 10 to 14 years old is in this country? Suicide. Number 2. 10 to 14, folks, not 17 and 18-year-olds that are dealing with more crux of matters and stuff. This is 10 to 14. We've got a society of 10 to 14-year-olds, including my children in this congregation. Look at them and tell me if you think it's normal that our children are being driven to be killed more than anything but accidents in this country at the rate of suicide. That's not normal. That should cause us to take notice of what's going on. A lot of what's caused that isn't the case if you go back historically. Suicide is not the second leading cause of death for young people. That historically, that number extends all the way up until 18, by the way. The suicide is still the second place holder. But I thought the 10 to 14 to me was the most shocking thing that I experienced with that. You know what one of the primary claimed causes of this is? Yeah, it has to do with bullying, but it's in a little bit broader picture.
Social media.
It's social media. It's an engine for bullying, for body dysmorphia, for ADHD, for all these behaviors, for explicit materials, to access to all of this abuse, everything. What we used to deal with, I was bullied in school, and I used to, get out of the school, come home, and everything stopped. And I survived that. But you know what doesn't happen for these kids that go on social media and they're bullied? It never ends. It's 24/7. It's around the clock, and everyone can witness it. Bullying never stops for these kids. What I'm saying by saying all of this, by addressing all of these things, is I'm saying is awareness is something that's so important for us, for our kids to understand and for us to understand what is it that's going on with our children if they start to access this type of stuff. And do you know what's going on in that world? And I know that's a lot to digest, and this is just the social media, I get that. But comments, questions, input, tell me what you guys are thinking about this and whether this is the right path.
What I was thinking was, I can remember, as my kids were growing up, it was, well, they dressed different, they dressed modestly, they didn't have all the things that the other kids were doing that was immodest. And now it's, you don't have a cell phone?
Yeah.
And you're 14?
Yep.
What's wrong with you? It's so embarrassing if you don't have a cell phone.
Yeah, you're just basically a freak. Yeah, if you don't have some sort of cell phone. And I mean, that's social pressure. I mean, we dealt with it in different forms, but that is the new thing, right? That's the new thing. That's the fit-in thing. Other comments, other thoughts? Johnny?
I think oftentimes parents want to be their child's friend other than to be their parent.
Mhm.
And at times they think that they're doing them a favor by allowing them to access all the social media websites and be part of the hip, cool stuff as they want to put it, or whatever terminology they want to put that out. You know, I've lived it with the jobs that I've had in behavioral health, working with teens. I've seen it, I've dealt with it, I've counseled them, I've nurtured them, I've prayed, you know, more than I care to even talk about that
Yep.
subject. But the thing about it is, you know, as parents, we have a job to love and nurture and protect and to guide and direct and to give them the full tools that they need to sustain this worldly life, including, most importantly, the spiritual armor of God. And, you know, that's what they need more than a friend, you know. And that's where it fails. That's where parents fail their children by allowing such things as that, at least not moderate. They need to moderate whatever is going to allow in.
No, absolutely. I think that that's a lot of it. I've heard often the statement made, you're not your child's friend, you're their parent. And I think that that's very accurate, actually. Doesn't mean you're not friendly, it means you're not their friend. You're not on a peer level with them to make them happy in those things. Any other comments? I do have a second part, I know, I'm going to get into that, but I just wanted to offer that. So when we talk about social media, I'll go ahead and launch out. If you have comments, raise your hand. When you talk about social media, one of the things that we find on there, and I've seen it actually quite little, but I've heard of other people saying, even on regular mainstream social media, is illicit material. Things will pop up, things that are sent to tantalize, to kind of get your attention, to get that going. And maybe you haven't seen that, but what I've often said to people is the truth is these algorithms know who you are. And it's possible that a 30 to 40-year-old mom of 3 or 4 doesn't get the same feedback loop information as an adolescent young man. Okay? So don't think that because you don't see it on there that maybe it's not available to them. And what do you think that an adolescent young man would be fed by these dopamine feedback loops that are designed to try to entice them to stay on? They use it. It is sexual content, absolutely. That is what's going to grab them and keep them, which takes us to the second part of this class. I'm gonna have to pop past this. I'm gonna skip this. It's a whole other discussion if you want to be terrified about character AI, that's another one. And that takes us to pornography. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on numbers, but I do think it's worthwhile to show the numbers on this. What's the number one reason that online sites peddle pornography? What's the purpose? It's money, right? Yeah, we know it's about money. So the online industry in the US for pornography is a $97 billion industry. Okay, that's big. That's a really big industry. By comparison, I think Microsoft is like a $30 billion industry. So it's pretty big. It's a pretty big industry in that. That means $3,075.64 every second of revenue for this industry. That's a lot, okay? The most major site, I'm not going to name it, one site for pornography gets 3.5 billion visits per month. Amazon gets 2.72 billion visits per month, to give you a comparison. Is there anyone in here that doesn't use Amazon? Probably not. I mean, I do. You think about that. How many Americans use Amazon, but one pornography site gets billions more visits, 1.1 billion more visits per month than Amazon does. That's insane. And I'm on Amazon a lot, folks. That's pretty crazy. 35% of all internet traffic is pornography. 35% of everything that passes through the traffic ways. Is pornography a danger for our children on the internet?
Absolutely.
Yes, it is. Absolutely it is. And that's what, of course, I want us to be able to see. We all care about our children, and we understand that. So we might look at this and say, you know what? That actually might be a barrier for my kids, because if it's a $97 billion industry, then you got to have what to get to it? You got to have a credit card, right? They don't have money. They can't get to it. That's not the way, I didn't know this, doing my research, found out, it's not the way that pornography works. Those sites, everything's free. You just go there and you can watch everything you want. In fact, if someone goes to a pornography site and starts watching videos and they watched them nonstop 24 hours a day, they could watch 87 years of videos. You can never run out of things for that dopamine loop to be fed with illicit, filthy material. Just to give us a taste of what's out there for this. The idea is that it's free because they're selling clicks and impressions. They run ads on the sides for stuff, and they get paid for that, just like Google does, just like all these other places that are free. They're selling your presence. They're selling your clicks. The more people they can shove into this engine and destroy, the more money they make. And they don't have to spend, these people don't have to spend $1. Our children can go here and for free, without any verification, download everything that they want to download. There's nothing stopping them except us. Okay? It's something to realize is what's going on out there for this. The thing is we all care about our kids, and I already stated that. And we might look at our kids and say, you know what, my kid doesn't seek that out. My kid's not going to go look for that. I think that's probably generally true. I mean, I don't think kids just go looking for it. Some do. Some gets told to something by their kids at school or something like that. But I think this is something to consider as we look at that. This is a 2021 study, so not that long ago. Probably has only gotten worse. 16 to 18-year-olds. 95% of boys and 70% of girls, by the time they were 16 to 18, were exposed to pornography. Basically all the boys and most of the girls. 55% said the first time was accidental. They weren't looking for it. They were clicking around doing something else on the internet and it popped up. The evil is crouched and waiting at the door, folks. It does not have to be looked for necessarily. The first exposure age for boys, average, 11. The first exposure age for girls, 13. 87% of all boys did not tell anyone about it. 69% did not tell anyone about it. Of the boys who told someone, 17% told a parent. 38% of girls told a parent. That's of the ones who sold somebody. For 100 boys, 2 told their parents that they found it. Of 100 girls, 12 told the parent that they found it. Your kids aren't going to come to you if they run across this accidentally. That's the lesson for us. It's simply not going to be done that way. Remember, 55%, it was accidental the first time that they saw it. So what does this tell us? Number one, we need to have discussions with our kids. We don't have to describe what they're going to find, but we need to tell them. We've had discussion with our kids and told them, there's stuff out there on the internet. The reason we tell you not to go is because there's people out there who want to steal you from us, spiritually and with your soul. They want to take you from us, and we don't want to lose you. We put the fear in them that there's stuff out there. And if you get to seeing something or doing something on the internet, come and tell us, come and talk to us about it, and get that discussion started for them so that they understand what's going on out there. We have 8 minutes left. I just want to make sure and try to manage our time here. I'm going to open this for comments in just a second. As I've said before, access and exposure, it's going to happen, especially as children grow and they grow older and they get out more into the world. Our hope is that exposure doesn't become addiction. That's what we're trying to avoid in this, and trying to understand that that's the difference. This is a topic, like I said, it's been on my mind for quite some time. Children who have fallen away, talking to survivors. I spent, not just even a couple weeks ago, and I've spent other times sitting with parents of children who have fallen away, sitting and crying with them over lost because of this filth that's out on the internet. I'm sorry, it's an emotional thing for me, but the point is that I've watched and listened to these people, and I've asked them, what is it that you would have me say? What is it that you would have me teach people that are Christians, that are trying to do what's right, and they're Christians, their kids are good kids? What would you have me say? And they say, be aware. Don't be unaware of what's out there and what the risks are. Your good kids are not going to be able to stand up against this. They want people to know what is out there and what these kids are facing. Jen has counseled ladies that have called her from past times that she's known them, that are now married, that are married to husbands that are addicted to pornography. Their marriages are decimated. They're destroyed. They can't have children. They're not going to. Their families are going nowhere. And it's just so sad, case after case after case. We have a friend who, these are all, by the way, they're not secondhand. These are people we know personally in the church, good Christian people. These are elders and preachers, and their families have been just rent over this from their children. The children almost completely, almost 100%, the children that are addicted, the time that they find out that they are is when they declare that they're homosexual. Almost 100%. You think about that. That's outrageous. The depths that pornography takes these children is they turn them over in these engines, and they keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. We have a friend that has been dealing with this recently, with a child that they got caught doing this at school, actually. Not somewhere that they could prevent, once again. But they had been doing it ever since they can remember. That's what they said. Ever since I can remember, I've been watching this. This was a 13 to 14-year-old boy. And he said, I've decided I'm a woman, and I don't believe in God, and I want nothing to do with any of you. He's a 13 to 14-year-old, just damaged, just broken from this, from a lifetime of exposure. They had no idea. These are members of the church, folks. These are not people who are leaving dysfunctional, abusive households or leaving out materials that these children can find. They're not that. These are just people like you and I that they're having to deal with this now. People that would never put their families knowingly at risk. Okay? I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to ask you again to make comments, inputs, anything that you guys want to share at this point. Jennifer?
I think another thing that we need to do is not treat sex and marriage as a dirty thing. I know in my family growing up, we didn't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
The talk that I got when I was like maybe 11 or so was about puberty and my changing body. Never did we talk about sex. And when kids don't get information in a godly, honest way, they are going to start getting it somewhere else. And I think we don't need to make it an uncomfortable subject and a taboo subject for kids. And I think that's a big problem in the church overall, is that, we just don't talk about it. And so when kids see sex as this taboo, let's go find out about it.
Yeah.
Of course, they're going to go
They're going to go.
the other way.
Yeah, I agree. I think that positive discussions of the material in one sense, depends on the age of the child, obviously, but there is a function for that as well, being able to do that. Okay, I want to mention one more thing. We've got about 3 minutes left here. One more thing, and that is access. Recently, I had there was a round table I was invited to. I was talking to a bunch of young men, 12 to probably 18 years old. And I asked as I started, I said, I just want a show of hands. How many here have their own cell phone or device they can connect to the internet? About 2/3 of them raised their hands. There were a lot of homeschool kids in there, so they were weirdos like some. But like 2/3 raised their hands. I said, okay, how many of you with that have parental controls on your phones? About half of the 2/3 raised their hands. And I said, how many of you with parental controls or without parental controls or something like that have something that is like a completely limiting thing or a monitoring thing like Covenant Eyes or a barcode or something like that? 2 kids raised their hands. This was a group of about 40. And it narrowed down to 2 kids actually had a phone or something that would monitor their activity on the internet. The family plans, the smart family they call it, smart family or Apple family, and things like that. This is something that I wanted to talk about. How many of those kids do you think that have no protections in place and have unfettered access to the internet, that 55% of them, statistically speaking, will accidentally find pornography, will survive that experience without any guidance whatsoever on their own? This is where the killing field is. This is the battlefield that we're on. And this is where these children have been left out unknowingly. They have good parents. They have Christian parents that wanted them to be a part of this roundtable and this discussion. Apple phone, Android phone, both have parental controls. This is on the Apple forum. I know you can't read it. I don't know, maybe you can. This is the guy that posted this in 2022. He said, we've been using parental controls and family sharing, but it seems like kids are one step ahead in finding ways to get around them. It's very easy to Google articles like this one. That article there by Family Orbit gives you 7 ways to bypass the parental controls on an Apple phone if the parents have Apple protection on it. What I did is I went online and started researching that. There are support groups for kids where their parents put the Apple Smart Family or whatever it's called on their phone. And there are support groups that tell them how to get around it, how to keep from being monitored, how to defeat it, and turn it off. There are school groups actually advertised on Reddit was one of the ones. I know somebody mentioned Reddit. There's school groups that are advertised on Reddit. We get together and let kids know they can get to their phones without their parents knowing. It's there. Same for Android. I actually bought my kids Android phones with the Verizon family on it. And what we noticed when we got it, they were like, oh, it blocks all this stuff, it does all these things, it filters everything. I started noticing they were getting calls by spam and such on texts that we didn't authorize. So I took their phones and I started fiddling around. It took me about 10 minutes and I was on YouTube, I was on Google. I could do a Google search for anything I wanted. That's unfettered access, and it had the family controls on it. And the point I want to make of this is that, again, this is one of the things that the people who I talked to who had fallen to this and now they're an advocate to try to make sure that we know the battlefield that we're on, is that they understand that those things are not the answer if you're thinking that that's going to keep your kids away from this stuff. These things are flawed. You have to have something else. Number one, either you've got to limit that connection to the device so that they can't be alone, or you've got to have something better. You've got to have something better than these things. And that's what they said. They said, don't depend. I would say 2 of the 4 that I talked to in preparation for this class, 2 of the 4 had parental controls on the phones that they fell to this. And they became addicted for 10 years or more and totally lost parts of their life. These are young men, by the way, just so you know what we're dealing with. These are young men that now, when they went and proposed to the wife that they wanted to marry, a Christian young lady, that they had to explain to them that they have a problem. That's what was left to them. And they've tried to move on in their life and stuff, but it's a part of them. We're trying to avoid that battle and that breakdown. I wanted to present a couple of tools that I asked them. I said, what's the standard for protecting kids? Number 1 is Bark Phone. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. We got them for the boys, and we like them. What Bark Phones come, and they have nothing on them. You can do nothing with a Bark Phone out of the box. It has no icons. And then you can add the ability to call people, and only certain people. You can add the ability to text, and only certain people. And then the Bible app, the Pitch app. And then you can certain things. But the phone is watched 24/7 by AI. And if anything questionable comes up, I get questionable things from Owen making fun of Sam all the time when he texts him, and he'll say bullying, and it'll send me an email right away. I just get it. And I'm like, wow. And I get to look at it and go, I like it. I like being told only if there's things that I need to look at. But the phone is completely cut off. It's not a program. It's the actual operating system has been redone. The other thing that most of them turn to is Covenant Eyes. Covenant Eyes is a program, but it sits on top of the phone. But what it does is, again, uses AI to simply watch what's going on. And if something concerning pops up, it sends an alert to whoever you hold as an accountable party. I keep it on my phone. I know a lot of guys that just do it because it just helps us to have a better sense of who we are and know that, hey, if I ever were to do something on my phone, my wife would get an email about it. And I think it's a really good accountability tool for all of us because the world is set on grasping and keeping our children from us, and for our own sake, our own things that we have that are set before us. So here's what I would say at the end of this, and I know we're kind of going over time, but I'm going to take this time. The Christians I spoke to want everyone to know, be aware of the danger. Know the battlefield that your children are on, and don't be ignorant to thinking that family controls or smart controls are going to do the trick. They're not. They're going to fail, and they're going to be a problem for us. And if you think that that's not the case, this is what I used in our roundtable. Luke 22:31, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan has demanded to have you that you might sift you like wheat, but I prayed for you that your faith may not fail. Peter the apostle was going to be faced off by Satan, and Jesus the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God, was praying that his faith wouldn't fail. We cannot set our children toe-to-toe with Satan and not expect them to be sifted like wheat. They will be. They're not going to come off better than Peter the apostle talking to Jesus the Christ. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Resist him, steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same sufferings are experienced by your brotherhood in the world. With God, we can be victorious, but we have to be aware of the battlefield that our children are on in this. By the way, I will be happy to talk to anybody about any of this content, disagree, agree, want more information, anything, resources, anything like that. There's some really great Christian support groups out there that are out for people and children to be able to get them resources to protect them. I appreciate your patience with this time, and I hope this has been beneficial. Thank you.